18. Oh, here we go here. I can change this for you. So I started at Oregon State as a master's student in 2018. Really, I started because someone told me that to be a structural engineer, you needed to have a master's degree, and I wanted to be a structural engineer. I fell in love with grad school, so I decided to continue on with the PhD program, and so this is my first year of the PhD program. So yeah, I'll turn it over to the next person here.
Hello, everyone.
I made you a co-host, Dominga, so you should be able to put your video on. Sorry about the error. I've never done a webinar before.
There I am. Hello, everyone. Good evening. And Walker, thank you for inviting me. My name is Dominga. I am also a PhD student in the civil engineering department with a focus in engineering education. So I don't know if you are aware that we have an engineering education program here. It's a very unique program. There are not a lot of those programs in the US, and because I have a structural engineering background from UC San Diego, this was the best program for me. I am in my third year, and Walker, can you remind me what was the other question that you had?
I guess just what brought you here. That's fine, I think, for now.
Okay.
Walker, is it my turn?
Sure.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Whitney Courthouse. I'm the graduate program coordinator in CCE. So I help students from start to finish of their program, especially with registration, programs of study, kind of the ins and outs of grad school, and just making sure that everything runs as smoothly as possible. I worked as the head advisor in undergrad before taking this position, so I know kind of both sides of the coin. We have some great programs, and I'd be happy to talk about the Accelerated Master's Program and any questions that you might have. So always feel free to email me if you come up with questions after tonight.
I guess, Gustavo, you're next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gustavo Araujo. I am this second year PhD student at OSU. I am, as Esther is doing, double majoring in both civil engineering and food science. I was not an undergrad at OSU. I did my undergrad and master in Colombia, and then I connected with OSU through Professor Barbara Simpson. I'll explain a little bit later during the webinar how I came here, and then I've been working during 2020 in the structural performance of mass timber structures.
Okay, I think I am the last one to go. I'm Haley Madland. I am a first year master's student here at OSU. So I am 6 weeks into my graduate career, but I'm in the civil engineering department, structural focus. My faculty advisor is Dr. Fisher. I went through the Accelerated Master's program. So if you've got any questions on that, I can try to answer as best as I can from a student perspective. But yeah, I'm excited for the webinar type of deal here.
Okay, great. So as I wait for more questions to populate in here, I have some questions for you guys. Well, I guess we can answer this first one. So what can an undergraduate student do to make themselves more appealing candidate for a funded research position? So I guess Haley is the only person that went to Oregon State as an undergrad. So I guess maybe that's an interesting perspective. But then also the rest of you, I guess how you went about reaching out and then what things can people do to make them to be more appealing to find a research position? Esther?
Yeah, obviously I am not, somebody who accepts people into grad programs, so take this with a grain of salt, but I would say the best thing that you can do to prepare yourself is get involved in research. We have a lot of labs here. Might be difficult right now because of COVID, but just volunteer your time in the lab, volunteer to help a grad student that you know. And I'm sure they'd be happy to, teach you a little bit more about the research side of things. That would probably be my biggest thing.
I guess we'll just go down the list. Dominga, do you have anything?
I would recommend for undergraduates to try to apply to research experience for undergraduates program. And these are known as RU programs. They're available nationwide. It's a 10-week summer program where you apply for a lab that you're interested in, wherever the university is. You get a stipend, you get housing, and you get the experience. I am not aware of what graduate schools look for, but I can tell you that the more research experience you have, the better. And sometimes, if you can get paid for it, it's better, right? But sometimes you also want to participate in extracurricular activities like EERI or the Steel Bridge, concrete canoe team, because that gives you a hands-on experience, and that also gives you other network possibilities. So I was heavily involved with EERI as an undergrad, and going to these conferences is what really exposes you what's out there and what research is being done if you can attend the workshops or the lectures. I feel that it's important to touch base, do a little bit of research here, hands-on internship there. All of that is important so that you know where you want to go or have an idea of what type of research you're looking for. There's also programs like through like STEM Leaders program that offers research experience. Sometimes your research experience might be elsewhere. It may not be in the civil engineering program, maybe in the mechanical engineering department or geophysics department. I know I did an internship there for a summer. So just keep your options open and try to explore.
So I would encourage specifically undergrad students, if you're in CCE, to talk with the undergrad advisors about potentially getting involved in research like the rest of the panelists mentioned. You can actually get technical elective credits for that if you talk to the undergrad advisors. So that's a great opportunity to not only use them towards your degree, but also to get some really great connection with faculty. If you're going to continue on to grad school at OSU specifically, having that rapport and connection with faculty early on is really important. It helps if you're interested in the accelerated master's program and also just in general, because the faculty at CCE are wonderful, but kind of getting to know their research and kind of where you want to fit in can really help with your application.
Gustavo?
Yeah, do you want me to add some more on this, Walker?
Yeah, of course. I guess, from your perspective.
Well, as I said, I did my undergrad and master in Colombia. To come to OSU and being accepted for the PhD position, it's important, like, for you to grow a good background in research as an undergrad. So in my case, for example, I had the chance to participate in a internship at UC Berkeley for undergrad students. That was a summer internship back in 2017. I had there the opportunity to participate in a project where I got involved with many renowned professors in the structural engineering field. And then that was great because when I was applying to the PhD, I needed some letters of recommendations, and as I have worked with this professor, I was able to email them to ask for the letter, and I got one from Professor Maley, who's very known for his knowledge in concrete, and I'm like confident that that helped a lot during my application. So I definitely encourage everyone to participate in as many research-oriented programs for undergrad students. There are many. I receive everyday emails from the civil engineering department about opportunities for different fields in civil engineering directed to undergrad students. I would also say that being involved in the ASE chapter and the EERI chapter are very important. So yeah, focus on that. I would say also, if you like you're in your final year as undergrad, and then I know you have been in touch with a professor, or you have been his or her student, and you're interested in what this professor does, reach out to him, ask him or her if he or she needs a student to collaborate in any project. I'm sure they will have many options for you. And that is something that you could put on your CV as well.
Okay, I think I'm the last one. So what can undergraduate students do? I think there's a lot of different things like people have been talking about. Like I think getting involved with research as an undergrad is always good. I personally at OSU, I did the SURF, which I think a summer undergraduate research fellowship program. So I got to like do a little bit of stuff here and like see if I liked research. That was also paid, which was super nice. I think I did URSA too here at OSU, which is like undergraduate research something, but it's like another thing to try out research here, which was super good. And then kind of to what Whitney said, just getting to know your professors, especially if you're like planning on being at OSU and going to OSU. Like I did AMP, and for one of the credits I did, that was like, okay, so AMP also it's when you take classes in your undergrad and then you like get to keep some of those credits for like in your graduate degree. And for one of those like credits, I like helped with my professor who was my AMP advisor. I helped with her research. So she kind of got to go know me and see if I would be like useful for research and stuff. So I kind of like built a connection with her, and I again got to like test out research. So I think there's a lot of different ways to just kind of like reach out, especially if there's any professors that you're interested in. I would just like try to create like a connection with them.
Awesome, thank you. The next question is, I guess this excludes you, Haley, but for the PhD students, what was your motivation for doing a PhD versus stopping at a master's?
Yeah, I can start again. So like I said, I intended really only to do a master's. I had no research experience prior to starting grad school. So if you don't have a bunch of opportunities, don't be afraid. Or if you haven't done a lot and you're in your senior year. I went to a school, we didn't even have a structures lab. So there wasn't really a lot of opportunities to do structural research. But then in grad school, I realized that I liked research, and that's why I continued. To be completely honest, it's not really a career, it's not really for my career. It wasn't like, oh, I wanted to be in academia. It was really just because I enjoyed the research side of things. I liked my project. I wanted to continue on it.
I agree with Esther. it's something you enjoy, I guess. But honestly, right now, I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing. There are these moments that just make me wonder, what was I thinking? I did have a research experience as an undergrad for 10 weeks during the summer in one project, analyzing earthquake data. And then I continued in the same lab, but the research was more technical as opposed to what I'm doing right now, which is more qualitative. And it's very different, very, very different. But I enjoy the research. So I was in the field for a couple of years before coming into grad school, and I did realize that there's a lot of demand for a master's or a PhD background. So that was one of the reasons that pushed me to come back to school. But I really wasn't planning on going into academia. It just happens, I guess. But I do enjoy it. So that's my reason.
Hey, Gustavo.
Yeah. Well, in my case, I would say that I was really interested in academia from the very beginning. So let's say that I always look in the future as doing my master and my PhD. But I want to say that the PhD program is not necessarily something that you pursue if you want to be like a professor or just being involved in academia. In the project that I am working right now with mass inverse structures, there are many practitioner engineers involved, and this is a very like a project that has a lot of research on it. So you don't have to pursue PhD only to be in academia. Actually, if you want to be in the field, it could be useful for you as well, just because the knowledge that you gain, the understanding of your field, if it's either structural or soils or water sources or in general, I feel like it first it's fun. I'm like you have to love it, you have to enjoy it, but also it opens your mind a lot. So those two reasons I would say are the ones for which I decided to continue my PhD.
Great. I don't know if you have anything to add, Whitney, but the next question is, what career goals makes it more beneficial to participate in grad school as opposed to not? So I guess this kind of ties into what people have been saying with this last question, but at the alternative is like, what made you decide that you needed to do this other than just wanting to do it? Like, I guess, so what career goals make it more beneficial to participate in grad school as opposed to not? I guess we'll start back up with you, Esther. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I think it can be really beneficial for those who kind of, have that focus that they are interested in. Civil's pretty broad, so if you're interested in structures or geotechnical engineering, and you know that that's what you want to do, you can start narrowing in that expertise early on. Additionally, like when I was in my master's program, and even now, like kind of like Gustavo said, you're working with a lot of professional engineers who are, very interested in the topics that you're researching, so they might potentially hire you in the future. So there's networking opportunities in the specific fields that you're interested in particularly. So like Gustavo said, if you're interested in mass timber, you're probably going to be meeting a lot of people who work in that field and could potentially hire you afterwards. So I'll pass it over to Dominga.
Thank you, Esther. I don't know how to answer this question because I feel that it's different whether you want to go to academia or industry. I think it's important to that if you are in the PhD program, to also inform yourself or find some type of training that will help you in industry. I think that some of the benefits of going back to grad school is definitely the experience. When you're in undergrad, you're really learning a little bit about everything. And when you go to graduate school, you get to focus on something specific, like let's say geotech versus transportation versus structural versus what else is there? There's a lot of more options, even mechanical. So you really get to narrow your options and just focus on that specialty. I think that's what you gain in graduate school. And regarding job experience, I think that the more knowledge you have, the positions change. The positions change and your opportunities also, there's more opportunities for you. So that's my knowledge of this.
The one thing I would add is really take a look at your specific area of concentration that you're interested in, because some industry want those students to have graduate degrees prior to going into the field. Structural is one of those that a lot of times students end up continuing into grad school prior to going into industry. Our faculty are great resources, so definitely reach out to them, depending on your area of concentration that you're interested in, and just asking those questions can really kind of help you make that decision.
I guess, Gustavo, what made you think that it was the right decision?
Well, something I like to think is when you do your bachelor, it's similar to when you do high school. Like you know that in life, if you want to keep increasing like your position and maybe also your opportunities, you have to seek higher, right? So most of us are gonna end up working in a very specific field in which you would have to gain knowledge in order to get to in the opportunities to get certain projects or probably to be hired in certain renowned companies. The gain of that knowledge has two pathways. One is you gain the knowledge with experience. That's a slow one, I would say. And then you gain knowledge in grad school as well. So one benefit of going to grad school is that one. It's the same knowledge that you are probably going to learn in a very slow, with a very slow rate. You're going to get it here at the grad school much faster. And then again, you're going to get involved with this, probably with the same companies that in the future might hire you. So from the practitioner point of view, it's beneficial. And then obviously, if you just want to go to academia, then the career goal is like embedded in the idea of doing a master or PhD for that purpose.
Okay. I would say, at least personally for me, the reasons why I decided to go to grad school, because I was pretty on the fence, right? Kind of up until the wire of like deciding whether or not you needed to make that choice. For me, it was because I was most interested in structures, and I had heard, kind of like everybody else has said, that, if you're trying to go into structures, you kind of need to have your master's, just like for that specific field. And then partially for me, I've always kind of had it in the back of my head that I would like to come back after working in industry for a while and teach at a college. And I know that's just not really a reality if I only have a bachelor's. So at least for me personally, those were kind of the two reasons why I was like, this is why it makes sense for my like career later on to get the master's right now.
Awesome. Our next question is, I think anyone can answer this one. So I'm in the process of deciding which graduate programs to apply to. How should I go about researching different programs? How many programs should I apply to? How do you decide that a program is a good fit? So I guess when all of you were deciding which school was best for you, how did you go about that process? What made you decide that Oregon State was the good fit, even though this person might choose to go somewhere else?
Yeah, so when I was applying to graduate schools, I had the very same question. I honestly applied to every school that I could that waived the application fee because you were pretty much putting the application together anyway. So I was applying to a lot of schools. I particularly found professors who I wanted to work with, whose research I would be interested in working on. So for example, somebody came to my undergrad and gave a talk about their research, and I found it really interesting. So I ended up applying to work with them. And I did that with a few professors around. So it's really maybe not the program necessarily, but the person in the program, the faculty in the program might be something to look for if you know more specifically what you want to work on. And I would say that you can't apply to too many schools. So, I mean, keep your options open, be realistic, don't like spend all your time doing it, but definitely apply to a couple, you know, don't limit yourself. Yeah.
So like I mentioned, I'm focusing in engineering education, and there are very few programs in the US that focus on engineering education. I applied to all of them. And after that, what helped me made my decision was the research projects and reaching out to the to your future advisors, right? You want to have a conversation to see, you know, what the research more about the research projects. And the other decision factor, I have kids, so the community, what does the community look like, and will it be safe for my family? And then the other thing that I considered was funding, right? Well, you want to make sure that you're going to be funded, and that if you're not, you know, if you don't have a scholarship, I know that there's like the NSF GRFP, the fellowship program. If you are not bringing in your own funding, well, what type of funding is available for you? So those were the three important decision factors for me.
So a lot of prospective students reach out to me as the graduate program coordinator. So if anyone's interested in OSU specifically, I would definitely encourage you to email me. I can give you some great kind of information on steps to take and specific faculty you could reach out to depending on your area of concentration. But if you're looking at other schools, I would definitely look for someone kind of in a position like mine that can kind of guide you to certain faculty to talk to, or just kind of send you information about how their specific application works, kind of some tips and tricks. So that's where I would kind of start, is look for that one person to kind of help you navigate. And every university usually has a position like mine to kind of help those prospective students navigate the system.
Well, in my case, I chose OSU based on faculty as well. So as Esther pointed out, it's not, I mean, the program is important, but you end up deciding based on the funding opportunities that they give you, and if maybe you're interested in a specific professor or specific project that that university is carrying on. Yeah, I would say that there's no limit in the number of schools you could apply your programs, and unless you don't have money to pay all the fees. But other than that, apply to as many as you can, and then weigh your decision based on if you feel like what they are giving you is exactly what you imagine for your grad school. Think about, this is something that's basically going to impact your future. So try to choose something that you like, really like you see. In my case, when I saw it, I knew that OSU fitted me. The faculty was great, and also the installations of the university had what I was looking for. So those are the things post funding, I would say, are the more important to weigh your decision.
So for me, I kind of decided pretty early on that I just wanted to continue at OSU. So I didn't really apply to a bunch of different places. I kind of just knew what I wanted. I would probably recommend everybody else's approach if you aren't like super certain, because I just knew that I wanted to stay at OSU. But like if I had been confused on where I wanted to go, I definitely would have wanted the options of like, these are all the places I could apply to. For just staying at OSU, I would recommend like if you're talking about like researching different like stuff you want to do, like just talk to professors. I know I had a chunk of time where I was like, I know I want to do civil engineering and I know I want to do masters, but I'm not sure exactly which field I want to go into. So I like talked to Dr. Fisher about structures, and I talked to Dr. Istock about like water, and Dr. Hurwitz about transportation. And I kind of just like sat down with them all and was like, what are you doing? Like, can we talk about like what your research is and like what you talk to most grad students about? And that was super helpful in just like learning, okay, like I'm interested in this, I'm not in this. And like, I also, again, I kind of like made connections with the professors that I was interested in working with. So I guess if you're planning on OSU, that would be my recommendation.
Awesome, thank you. I think these next two questions can be kind of combined. So how has COVID affected your research, particularly with regards to experimentation? And then secondly, have you noticed any drop in funding for grad students as a result of COVID? Maybe that's an answer that Whitney could best answer. Do you think it will be harder to get funded or find grants, I guess, going into the 21-22 year? So I guess just briefly talk about how COVID has affected your grad experience.
Yeah, COVID. So most of my research is actually already virtual. I am doing some physical testing. So COVID hasn't had a huge impact on the actual testing and experimentation. Obviously, there are, our project was probably delayed in total like 6 months because of COVID. Funding, I do think that that's a question for Whitney, but from my experience at OSU, when I applied and got accepted to the master's program, they guaranteed my funding for 2 years. And then same with the PhD program, I have guaranteed funding for all 3 years. So if you get accepted and have funding going in, most likely you'll have guaranteed funding for all the years that you'll be a student. So it shouldn't be hopefully something that you need to worry about after you're accepted. But I don't know specifically, obviously, about current funding.
Yeah, I'm not sure about how funding is being affected. Regarding research, it wasn't the research projects that I'm participating in weren't that impacted. I think it's just a little bit like everyone else adjusting to the new norm right now and working from home virtually. But that's about it.
So right now, really luckily, there's been no big changes in our funding plans for 2021-2022 application cycle. Things might change, but we've been really lucky in terms of being able to have the same amount of GTAs this year. A lot of universities across the country are having budget cuts, but that did not affect any of our GTA budgets or anything along those lines. So I have a feeling that it's going to be the same for next year and that we're not going to have really any negative impact.
Then Gustavo and Haley, you don't need to answer if you don't really feel like you have anything to add.
Yeah, I just would say same as Esther in my case. I don't feel COVID has affected in funding. It has certainly affected research in the sense that labs are now closed and kind of have been slow to the process of opening again. That's all.
Yeah, and I would say that I started grad school in the middle of the pandemic, so I can't really base how like it's going now versus any like prior experience. I do know like some of the labs on campus, like only like one or like not one person, but like two people maybe are like allowed in at a time or something. So I'm assuming it's probably going a bit slower than it normally does for some people's research, but I can't really say how much it's changed for me personally.
Great. When would you recommend taking the FE exam? Do you have any advice for students who will be taking it soon? I guess we can go through that.
Yes, even if you want to go to grad school, I highly recommend taking the FE. I did. It's when all that info is fresh in your mind. So I highly recommend it. And also grad school master's program counts as 1 year of experience for your PE, and PhD is 2, I believe. So your graduate program, even if you go or if you don't go, will count towards that. Yeah.
Definitely take it as soon as possible. I think there are programs or workshops out there that provide support to students on how to study for this exam. And there's also like classes that you can pay for. There's a lot of resources out there through programs like EERI or ASCE that are there to help students. So keep an eye out for those and take it as soon as possible.
I just wanted to mention after Dominga mentioned the help you can get at OSU. In the past, I believe they're still doing it. Industrial engineering has been giving out or participating in review sessions. So if you're interested in that, just Google it. It comes up really easily, or you could ask your undergrad advisors about it.
Okay, well, I think that's good for that. Can you explain what funding is and what it covers? I think this is a good question because we just keep saying funding, funding, funding. So like there are fellowships, there's GTA funding. So I guess everyone can just talk about their own funding, and Whitney maybe can add some more pointers on that too.
Oliver, just wanted to mention there's a question in the chat from Joshua Malpass that I don't.
Yeah, I saw that. We'll get to that after. I'm just going down the list in the order that they came. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, so funding, So my funding in particular, so funding is really generally covers your tuition as well as some types of fees that you pay as a graduate student, and you also usually will get a stipend like for housing and food and things like that. So my first year, I was a GTA, which is a graduate teaching assistant. So I was basically working 20 hours a week, mostly grading papers. I'm sure you all have had TAs before, you know generally what they do. And then my second year, I was an RA, which is a graduate research assistant. So basically, I was being paid for doing the actual research on my project. And then this year, I'm actually a fellow, so I actually don't work for the university. Technically, I don't have a job, but I am just given funding for basically my tuition is still covered, my fees are still covered, and then I'm provided with a stipend for housing. It's just a little bit different, but pretty much everything is covered the same types of funding. So there are different types. You might have different requirements for different funding that you have, but yeah, many options.
I am along the same boat as Esther. I had GTA funded, which covered tuition and also research funding. And I also was a whole year on a fellow funding through the university. So I think these types of information is important to talk about when you're deciding what university you will be attending, to make sure you have that funding. And then there's also external funding, like I said, like the NSF GRFP program. So look for other sources of funding as well.
Yeah, those explanations were great. The only thing I wanted to add specifically, if you're applying to OSU, is if you are applying to either a Master of Science or a PhD, you're automatically considered for funding with your application. There's no additional step. MEng or Master of Engineering is not considered for funding because that's just a strictly coursework based, but MS and PhD are automatically reviewed.
I can go. I kind of same story as everybody else. I got funded as a GTA this year. The only thing that's slightly different is I initially was funded as a GTA the entire year, and then this first term I kind of got swapped over a couple months beforehand to be a GRA. So I think I'm gonna swap back and actually be a TA next year, but I do think they're kind of movable. Like if funding pops up in a different spot, as far as I understand it, you can kind of get moved. That's what happened to me, but I'm still getting funded the exact same. It's just instead of TAing a class right now, I'm getting paid for the research stuff.
Okay. This one, I don't know if anyone, maybe people could just kind of think about what it would be, but if a student is planning on working in the industry, then return to grad school, what should the student do while finishing up undergrad degree to prepare for, make it easier to apply to grad schools a couple of years later? So I guess if you're thinking about going into industry and coming back, what things can you do to prepare?
I think that kind of getting your quote unquote ducks in a row, kind of maybe looking at some applications and see what they are looking for. Likely they'll need a transcript. So, you know, just making sure you have your transcript ready because, you know, 5 years from now or whatever, you might not remember how to access your transcript from OSU. Maybe making connections with professors here who might potentially write you a letter of recommendation, because having that kind of industry, or I'm sorry, academic connection valuable. I would also say maybe consider taking some of the tests now, like the GRE, because you're kind of used to studying. Your whole life is kind of focused on studying right now. Maybe in a couple of years you might have a really busy life and you don't have as much time to study, so maybe consider taking that now.
Definitely keep contacts with professors, or you're going to need those letter of recommendations if you plan to go into grad school. Industry, I guess I want to say something like, make sure it's related to where you want to go in the future in grad school. Make sure that the field that you're going into industry supports your future graduate program.
I would say also be sure that while you are in the industry, to participate in many research involved events. There are many conferences or basically, or reunions that are being held during the whole year, either if it's structure or any other fields in civil. And these events are important because they help you to be updated in what's been done in research. And at the end, that can serve to also like keep contact with meaning researchers from different universities. There are many spaces in these events when you can chat just with the speakers. So yeah, I would say I would add that too.
Yeah, and I would probably just basically agree with what everybody else has already said. Know where to get your transcripts. Try to like make sure you've got those connections that you can call on for letters of reference and all that. But yeah, pretty much the same as what everybody else has said.
Great. So why don't we go? Do you have any recommendations for the GRE and when to take it? How early should you start preparing for the GRE? What is it like?
So I took the GRE probably like a week after I graduated, I want to say. Oh no, because I took it, because you have to use it for your application. So probably my junior year, I took it. It was like a week into the summer, so I was already kind of studying. My recommendation would be to look at the average GRE scores of the schools that you're interested in, kind of like maybe your top choice or whatever, and see what the averages are and kind of set that as a goal, or maybe a goal to be a little bit higher or somewhat. I don't know if this is true, but they say that engineers often only look at the math scores, so maybe focus more time on the math. I probably studied for around 3 months before taking it. I may have done a little bit more. I know people who have done a little bit less than that. But I like to go kind of slow in my studying, do maybe like an hour or so a day, kind of slow and steady, I guess. I would say just know the types of questions that they'll ask you. The GRE is pretty infamous for trying to trick people, so know how they'll try to trick you by looking at like examples of GRE questions and stuff like that.
So I went to work right after undergrad, and I think it was 4 years later, I decided to apply to grad school. I did not even consider graduate school back then. It wasn't in my plans. It just happened, like I said, based on my experience and where I was working. I decided that I needed more academic experience, so I went back to school. I also took my time in studying for the GRE. Once I decided I was going to apply for a graduate school, I studied during the weekends, and I purchased those books, 2 different types of books. And it is about techniques and not being tricked into these the questions. It can be a little tricky. And it was I think it was like a 3-hour test, 3 to 4 hour. I forgot. I only took it once. And it was pretty straightforward. So a lot of vocab. I don't know if it has changed since I took the GRE. So just, yeah, that was my experience.
I'd say that if English is not your first language, maybe the vocabulary part, well, I think it's called analytical reading, something like that. Might be hard. Yeah, I would say that if you're going to engineering, the math part is the most important. I found it to be the easiest one. So, but don't be too confident and always study or try to prepare. It's more about being fast rather than like being smart in the math part. So I prepare 2 weeks before the exam. During those 2 weeks, I basically did some example tests that you can find on the internet or you can buy. And then if English is not your first language, try to practice vocabulary, because there's a lot of vocabulary in the GRE. And then writing, just try to get the minimum that grad schools require, which I think it's 3 out of 6. But yeah, don't be too confident. Study, take it. If you can take it after you finish your undergrad, that would be great, because the knowledge is still fresh in your mind. But I would say there's no right time to take it. Whenever you feel like it's time to go to grad school, you can take it as well.
So I've had a little bit of a different experience. Since I was through AMP, I did not take the GRE. So that was super cool. If you are planning on going to OSU and you are interested in AMP, I would highly, highly recommend it. It was one less big test I had to study for. Worked out pretty good. I got in, didn't have to take it. But yeah, if you're interested in OSU, I would do AMP so that you don't have to take the GRE.
Following up on that, to answer Joshua's question, timeline of the AMP program versus traditional. I don't think the timeline changes very much. To answer your question, Gustavo, AMP is the accelerated master's program. Don't worry about it, you're not in it. But I guess Whitney and Haley, is there a timeline difference? Because it doesn't seem like there's really a timeline difference. It just changes your workload.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're asking about timeline to apply. So in terms of AMP, we'd really love for you to apply when you're a junior. The AMP program is very new, so we're still, kind of working out the kinks and things like that. So I actually have pretty much removed the deadline for AMP, and I'm happy to work with you if you're a senior and you're like, oh, I didn't even know about it. I don't want people to miss out on this opportunity, so I've basically just been allowing students to apply. But what's important if you are a senior is that connecting with me as soon as possible, because I want to make sure that you're able to take those credits in winter and spring terms to make it worth your while. So that's important. In terms of how it works, so you get 12 credits that you were taking as an undergrad, but you also get to count them for your grad degree. So it's kind of like you're double dipping. It's pretty amazing. I think it's a wonderful program.
Whitney, just real quick to hop on while you're here to answer this other question. I don't think this is a thing, but are AMP students automatically considered for funding, or is there something additional they need to do later in their senior year to be considered?
Oh, sure. That's a good question. So in terms of AMP, kind of like what I mentioned earlier, as long as you're applying for the Master of Science, as opposed to the Master of Engineering. So the Master of Science is going to be automatically considered for funding. That includes AMP students. So for AMP, you are applying for the term that you want to enter grad school. So if you're a junior and you're going to start grad school in fall of 2022, There's nothing you have to do between now and then to let us know that you're interested in funding, as long as you're applying for the Master of Science specifically.
Great. And then I have a question that was sent to me before this event. Maybe we can do one more question, then wrap it up as the time is coming around. I guess, I don't know, are all internship experiences viewed equally on applications? So like a CCOP type of internship versus a RAU internship. I don't know if you guys have any input on that, but that's a question that we could end on.
I can say from my experience, like I said, I didn't have any research experience, but I think the CCOP, is that like where you work every other term?
It's basically you apply and then they assign you to an internship for X amount of months.
Okay. Well, I did something called a co-op, which is where you work every other term. I think it's pretty similar. So I was actually an undergrad for 5 years because of that, but I was working for a year, and then I did internships, which I don't think it didn't help me, but I don't know if it would be necessarily treated equally to like a research, more specifically a research-focused internship. But the experience was great. I don't regret it. I think it was valuable overall. So.
We did not have, or I did not have a MECOP program or anything similar to that at UC San Diego, but we did have a lot of research experiences or research opportunities. So I wouldn't know how to answer that. I think that they're both unique opportunities. They are both hands-on experience. You will gain knowledge in either of those types of opportunities, whether in internship or research.
I just wanted to add one thing. In terms of the application, faculty are really looking for, well-rounded applicants. So that's not just your, academics, but internships or research, either, help your application because it shows, you getting out there and utilizing other skills that's going to be helpful in grad school. So I do know that faculty view both of those as important components. So if you have either, it's great.
Great. Well, if anyone does not have anything to answer, that's kind of crazy that we wrapped up right at 7 with no more questions to go. I think this was a really good session. I want to thank everyone who came and the panelists. Thank you so much for your insight. Okay, great. Have a great Monday. Make sure you go vote if you haven't. Enjoy the rest of your weeks. Thank you guys so much.